Working in football, it's not really a job, it's a way of life. What's going to get you out of bed? You cannot be half in, half out. You need to understand the city, understand the culture, the fans, the owners. If you don't do that, you're going to fail. The driver at Cambridge is this phenomenal opportunity to go and align a club with an internationally recognised city and to try and do it in the right way with the right values in a sustainable manner. Now, that's one of the reasons we've just done doing the crest and the rebrand project, because we're not necessarily relevant to the digital world and the younger generation of supporters. So I think you have to be brave, and sometimes it can be difficult to take a group of people on that journey. But as long as there's a clear plan with the ownership and the directors, then, okay, you know where you're going.
Alex, we are so excited to have you with us. So first off, thank you so much for joining us in person today.
No, thank you for having me.
Well, no, I think more importantly, thank you for joining us when you've got such a massive moment about to drop, which I think, we can say because it will be released. But
it will be, yeah.
What is about to happen?
We are rebranding, which sounds like a bit of a marketing spiel, but we are changing our crest, modernising our identity at Cambridge United.
How often do you change your crest?
Last changed in the 80s, so 40 years ago. Current crest has served well. It's part of the DNA of the football club. It's part of people's lives. It's a very sensitive subject, and I've been lucky enough to now do that at 2 clubs. But when the owners of this club asked me to do it, I thought, this could be the most challenging thing I do at this football club.
How long has it taken, this whole process?
18 months. 18 months of live process and probably another 6 months pre-process.
And that's from like concept to engaging fans as well in the process as well?
Yeah, that's from the boardroom through to staff, all of your stakeholders, engaging, to bed sheets at Wigan last season saying hands off our crest, to hopefully in a couple of hours' time when it goes live, something very different, but something very modern, very progressive, and that's going to represent our club and our city.
What's the most exciting thing about doing something like that with a football club when it is away from the field?
You're not going to get many opportunities in the game to do that. So from a personal level, to do it twice, unbelievable, completely incredible. But with it comes so much responsibility. It's so subjective, it's so emotive, it's so sensitive, and ultimately, this is part of history. It's part of the history of the club. At the minute, it may feel very strange, and we're not going to be using it until next season, but hopefully in time, with success, and as we build a new generation of supporters, it will become part of the DNA of the football club.
Amazing. Can't wait to see it properly.
Does the logo really matter? Just pause. Like, does it increase sales? Does it increase fan loyalty? Do we actually expect to see a significant movement in any numbers as a result of a logo change?
I think in this case we do. So our crest is designed in the 80s. It's very clip arty. It's very kind of like US soccer. The initial CU, Cambridge United, are in the middle. They are actually offensive in 4 different languages around the world. So that's 4 demographics that aren't going to probably engage with us. It's really, really important. We're in a digital world now. How does it look on X? How does it look on Facebook? How do we interact with it? How does it look on merchandise? How would it look on these great things here? It's really, really important to get it right. And it's important also to understand the history and the heritage and to make sure we take that forward and we bring the whole fan base and all the stakeholders on the journey. Yeah, you need to build it for the digital world. We'd call those ones you just discussed like the roundel. This is probably a little bit more progressive than that. If you look at like Juventuses and things, but you need to be able to debrand. If you look at the best brands in the world, they've had the ability over time to debrand and simplify it. We're hopefully creating something that we can use in the future in a slightly different format. It fits us right now, but we're also creating sub-identities. So we're bringing in things like our mascot. We're bringing in things like the Abbey Stadium, the links to our city. We're bringing in the book and ball. Not many people know, but the rules of association football were founded in Cambridge. We've got an opportunity here to align ourselves closer to the city, tell the story and increase our audience.
When I said to you, who's the best CEO, you asked me which league, and you said they're very different businesses, say top flight and then Championship and League One. How are they different businesses, being CEO of a Premiership club to being CEO of a League One club?
I think you've got like size and scope to begin with. So I've come on a journey myself, which we can go into in a minute, but if I looked at when I was at Newport was a fan-owned club. We were probably turning over 4 or 5 million. We didn't own our training ground. We didn't own our stadium. We couldn't really pay our bills. We were, on all intents and purposes, a club built on sand, propped up by volunteers and supporters who did a phenomenal job to keep them in the Football League. If you compare that to maybe a Birmingham City or a Wrexham in League One at the minute, global audiences, international investment, particularly from the States, and then you look at the Premier League where you've got clubs floating on the stock exchange. You need 3 completely different people, 3 completely different skill sets, 3 completely different personalities to run them.
Do you want to make the transition of CEO across those different classes yourself?
I would say I've been CEO of 3 clubs. I've been really, really lucky to do that. I've had fun at all of them. I actually think the most important thing is being in the best environment, having great owners, being connected to your community and having those values. I think values is the key thing. Now, whether or not they get diluted as you go up the pyramid, I don't know. But to me, it's the values and being connected to the community that you serve that must be centre of any future opportunity.
You were CEO of Newport at 29. What did you learn from taking that position on at such a young age?
Unbelievable amount of things. I mean, it was a bit of a crazy scenario, really. So I was over in America at the time. Graham Wesley was the manager at Newport. He'd been at Stevenage, where I'd been previously, where I'd run their foundation. He'd had a big bust up with his club secretary, and I saw it and thinking about coming back to the UK. And I dropped him a message, and 20 minutes later, he was like, yeah, when can you start? So the role was like club secretary, head of ops, so signing the players. Now, I'd never signed a player in my life. So I turned up in January. I've swapped the beaches of Tampa Bay for Newport. And I've walked in, there were 2 members of staff. The offices were in an old like bowling alley in the back of the rugby club. I mean, it wasn't great at all. But what was built around it was this unbelievable love for the club. The club had gone bust in the 80s. It refounded. It was now owned by the fans. They bought it off a guy who'd won the lottery called Lottery Les, who played with it, had a bit of fun, and then just went, I'm out. So the fans have jumped in. They've come together, raised the money. Now they're running it. Everyone's a volunteer. That's great, but it's got its pitfalls. I've walked in day one. It's now the 1st of January. The team are bottom of the Football League, and I'm 28, and I'm thinking, okay, I could be running a National League club in 6 months' time. That's not bad in terms of where I want to go in my career. And Graham signed 15 players and released 15 players in January. So I had to learn very, very, very quickly. Didn't have anyone around me to do it. The photocopy didn't work. It was chaos.
Don't laugh. How do you sign a player? You reach out to the player, you reach out to the agent. How does it actually work?
Well, you can't tap them up. That's the first thing. It depends on the club. Most clubs nowadays, the sporting directors will go to agents. All the players have got agents, and they will say, look, do you fancy come and join us? If they're a free agent, if they're attached to a club, then you're going to the club to do it.
Even at the lower league? So if you're signing for Newport, the players are having agents, they've got similar representation?
Yeah, completely. And then what sits behind that is then the paperwork that you need to do. The complexity, obviously, for a club in Wales is you need international transfer clearance. So there's a bit more work that needs to be done. So the story of Newport is that those players got signed.
Did you have much of a budget?
We didn't have a budget. We could barely pay the bills.
So how did you buy players?
They're all free transfers, loans, really astute signings. And those players have actually gone on to do a phenomenal job for the club and even play at higher levels. Graham left at start of March. They lost at home to Leyton Orient. Leyton Orient had gone into admin. It was when they had the crazy Italians running it. They put their youth team out, and that was it. I mean, Newport, they were done. So I think it was 12 points adrift with 10 games to go. And there's a guy called Michael Flynn, or Flinny as he's known, played for the club from the local area, and the board. I remember we sat in the board meeting, which really was a combination of the pub and the local leisure centre. That's where the meetings sort of tended to happen. And they said, right, we're going to put Flinny in charge. I was like, okay. Flinny was a few years older than me. It was like, last throw of the dice. What can possibly go wrong? First game, win it in the last minute. Then we go to Morecambe, win again. And all of a sudden, this momentum just kept building. I mean, we get crowds like 1,500. All of a sudden, it's like 3,000, 4,000. An incredible scenario was that we went into the last game of the season and we had to match Hartlepool's result. Now, Hartlepool were relegated. They played Doncaster, who were top of the league. They needed to win to be champions. Hartlepool beat Doncaster. So where's that come from? Jeff Stelling, big Hartlepool fan. You might see the videos. He's going crazy on Soccer Saturday. So we're now at home to Grimsby. We've gone 1 up. It's now gone 1-1. Bear in mind, Newport, there was never any grass on the pitch. They used to share the stadium with the 2 rugby clubs. There's 8,000 there. I mean, we sold tickets for seats that we didn't have because we didn't know we didn't have those seats because we'd never got near 8,000. Last minute, ball pops into the box, centre back who couldn't hit a barn door, chests it, volleys it, boom, that's it. 2-1, the club stay in the Football League. It was absolutely incredible. If you want to know why you're in sport, this for moments like that, and that's a moment at the very, very bottom of the pyramid. The director's box was, I mean, there's people on the floor, there are bodies. It was absolutely insane. Following season, they finished 10th. They beat Leeds in the FA Cup. They took Tottenham to a replay, drew 1-1, took them to a replay at Wembley and lost 2-0. And then the preceding season, they got in the playoffs.
And when did you leave? Were you there for that?
I wasn't there for the playoffs, no. So I left at the end of the Tottenham season. The following season, they played Man City. I think they played Everton, and they got to the playoffs. Probably a big regret, you know. When do you leave? When do you leave an organisation? When do you leave a club? You know, you're building something, and a different opportunity comes along. It's difficult, but I mean, absolutely incredible. We had a kit man that was also the chef. The training ground burnt down once before we played Leeds in the FA Cup, and the kit was in all the tumble dryers. Things that just wouldn't probably happen, you'd think, in a Football League club took place. But do you know what? Everybody embraced it. There were some brilliant characters, and everybody cared so much about that club.
When you have that chaos around you operationally and you're trying to run a business, how do you even begin to start trying to organise something that can work cohesively off the field?
It's difficult because in that scenario, particularly first season, you're just firefighting all the time, trying to get games on because the pitch was so bad, trying to get the bills paid. It was, you know, it is all over the place. But there's an element of luck that you stay up. But equally, you create your own luck because you create your own culture. If you get good culture, then those things come. Second year was about putting an infrastructure in place, starting to build it. I mean, the end of the second year, we had 5 members of staff for a business that was probably turning over 5-6 million, and he's competing against Tottenham in the 4th round of the FA Cup.
Where's most of that 5-6 million coming from for League Two?
Central funding, TV deals, sponsorships, and then what we'd call football fortune. So that FA Cup run would have generated probably £1 to £1.5 million.
And the biggest financial pressures on the club being paying wages?
Yeah, paying wages, yeah. You know, you've got people coming to work every day. You need to pay them. You need to pay your bills. You need to pay your rent. We didn't have the stadium. We don't have the training ground. We're having to pay those landlords as well. It was tough. But during that experience, you're just learning so much. You're having to probably make 100 decisions today. You're having to keep 100 plates spinning all the time. But you're having to do a lot of everything. So you're having to engage with volunteers. You're having to do the same jobs as volunteers. If tickets need selling, you were selling them. You know, there's 8,000 people trying to buy a ticket for Tottenham in the FA Cup. Well, we didn't really have a proper ticketing system. So you're there, you're selling them. So you're getting a phenomenal experience about how it actually works, the challenges that people are engaging with at that level. And at the same time, you're learning so much humility, so much respect for a community, a club, and the people that are trying to run it and the people that love it.
How does media rights work in lower leagues?
It all goes through the Football League.
Okay.
So the Football League go through a very extensive tender process, and they divvy those rights up. So they will sell to the UK, they will serve to different international markets, and that commercial team do a great job, I think, particularly with the new Sky deal, of going out to market and getting the best possible pound for the club, and then that gets divvied up amongst everybody.
Can you tell us just a little bit about what that new Sky deal is? Because it's a very strong one in the current media climate.
So if you go to sort of pre-pandemic, there was no streaming rights. There would be games on Sky. I think there was like 20 games in League One, League Two that would be on Sky. And then just before the pandemic came, they released something called iFollow, which was a streaming platform which allowed games that didn't fall on a Saturday at 3 o'clock to be streamed. People would go on, buy a pass, and also opened up to overseas streaming. So all the games would be available. Potentially, COVID was a great thing in that it allowed that platform to get a lot of use. It allowed it to get a lot of exposure. And then people started to use it and those audiences started to grow. And then quite recently, so at the start of this season, new Sky deal gets announced, which means all of those games that were on iFollow from a UK perspective now go on to Sky, increasing the accessibility. But on top of that, there are increased number of live games. There's 2 games in League One, 2 games in League Two, 2 games in the Championship every single weekend. So we're giving more exposure to the product, we're engaging with new audiences, and essentially hopefully the product we're providing is more attractive from a commercial
And you get
perspective.
an additional line of revenue from My Follow, I take it.
We get an additional line of revenue, increased revenue from Sky, and we're getting increased revenues from
How much more money do you make?
a reasonable amount, more than you have to remember you're going to lose fans. So
Why are you going to lose fans?
because your away support if you've got a live TV game on it's a Tuesday night and you're travelling from Carlisle down to Cambridge and you could watch it on Sky and you've already paid for that subscription, you might think twice about travelling all the way down. Whereas pre this experience, you would probably travel. You still get the hardcore. And from a home perspective, we were home a few weeks ago. We saw a drop off of around 1,000 to 1,500 fans because of that. Because maybe they're travelling back.
What proportion is that? 10, 20, 30%?
Yeah, probably 15, 20%. That said, we're in a period where we hadn't won a game, so it's hard to tell. But if you look at other leagues, there is a drop off, but the drop off is far less than the financial gains. And also, it creates new opportunities, increased exposure for your sponsors, increased exposure for your LEDs. We've just installed LED this season because we can provide brands this completely new environment to advertise with us. We can advertise to audiences all over the world. So yes, we get more money. Yes, it's more than probably we lose on the crowds, but for us, we see this as a great opportunity to grow our commercial revenue streams as a result of having this fantastic new platform.
Is it like hundreds of thousands? Is it like millions?
It's not millions,
But it's like substantial hundreds of thousands.
yeah, it's good money. But the money we could earn off the back of it could be even better.
If you look at the Premier League, let's say they get 100 million base, and then let's say the rest of it is done up to maybe 170 on performance. What does that look like when you go into League One and you're dividing it between a Championship and a league below as well in the same deal?
The Football League divvy the income up 80-12-8. 80% goes to Championship, 12% goes to League One, 8% goes to League Two.
Is that enough?
It's probably enough if you're in the Championship.
Yeah.
If you're in League Two and you can't pay your bills, it's probably not.
Yeah.
But you've got to look at the media rights, you've got to look at what's going on, you need to look at clubs coming out of the Premier League, you need to look at parachutes. There's an awful lot in there beyond those figures.
Okay, so longer term, there's a lot of concern about the viability of building a business model that relies heavily on media rights. Do you think it actually benefits the clubs in League One and League Two in the longer term who are having to build better businesses around their clubs, not relying on the carrot that is 80% of media rights when they only get 8 or 12%?
Yeah, completely. And I think there's a bit of a watershed moment going on at the minute because clubs are all of a sudden going, we need to operate as good businesses. If we operate as good businesses, we are more attractive from a commercial perspective because people have got trust and confidence in us. And also, we tend to drive revenue better as a result of conducting ourselves and making good decisions. So I think every club in the Football League is going through that process. Everybody gets it. There's some fantastic clubs. There's some fantastic people running them. We're just upping our game.
It's not dissimilar though to tech financing, which is like when your competitor raises a huge amount of money and can spend a lot more than you, it is really hard to compete with them. And so when you have a Wrexham or you have a Birmingham and suddenly like they're able to invest millions in development, training grounds and facilities and amazing new corporate dining experiences. So how the fuck do we compete with that? And so it's a very difficult thing though when you have competition that is weaponized with cash.
Yeah, what we do need to do as an industry is we need to make sure that when new money comes in or increased money comes in, that it's spent wisely. So at the minute, what's happening is more money that comes into the game gets spent on players.
And I'm guessing you don't think that's wise.
It's the same pool of players. Whereas actually, if you were looking at the long-term view of things, not the short-term and not let's get promoted this season, you would say, right, well, how do we improve the whole game? We can improve the whole game by having better pitches. If we have better pitches and we don't have games called off, now our media rights holders are not getting pissed off, and also the product looks better on the pitch.
How much does a pitch cost?
A good one?
Yeah.
£1 million plus.
£1 million for a pitch a season. So you will actually postpone matches because of pitches?
It doesn't happen that often, but it does happen. And if you're Sky or you're a media rights over in the States, you don't want games being called off, do you? You want the reliability of that. And if you're sponsors, you don't want games being called off. So I think football has a responsibility to probably start to ring fence money. Could we be using money for fan engagement? Could we be using money for developing off-field things like infrastructure so that we look at the fan experience? All of these things I think the more money that comes to the game, we just need to spend it more wisely.
Okay, let's not dance around it, because I think there's such good examples of all of this in what we'll actually talk about with Cambridge. What has happened at the club since you've been there, and how have you started to look to implement this, should we say, off-field strategy as well as focus on the pitch?
Yeah, I think if we go back to the Cambridge story, so the club in the 90s, great teams, get to the Championship, a couple of FA Cup quarter-finals. They actually played in the playoffs in the Championship the year before the Premier League started, and they lost. So you think, what a moment that was for them. They could have been in the inaugural year in the Premier League. They didn't. They start to fall down. 2005, they get relegated out of the Football League. They go into administration. They sell their stadium. They then spend 9 years or so in the National League, probably one of the hardest leagues to get out of in the world. And Paul Barry, who's been involved in the club for quite a while, he's a fan. He lives in the States. He buys the club. He buys it in 2018, and then COVID hits. So his plans to develop, modernise the football club probably get stalled a little bit. But actually, in that period, the club managed to get themselves promoted from League 2 to League 1. So now we come out of COVID, fans are coming back. The club is in League 1. Everyone wants to rush back onto the terraces. The infrastructure was never there in the first place. There was a huge modernisation programme going on. Now, when I went to join the club, I don't think this was fully stressed, the exact scope of what needed to be done, but they had home Wi-Fi routers. People had personal laptops, policies, procedures. These things just hadn't been done because there are other fires to fight. I get that. There was COVID, and the directors and the board were doing a great job at getting the basics sorted out from a governance perspective and from a financial perspective. And then it was like, here you go, right, off you go, which was great because it's a completely blank sheet of paper. So what we've looked at is, right, first and foremost, let's get our policies and procedures right. Let's get all the boring things done. Let's get our finances sorted. Let's get our HR sorted. Because if we don't sort that out right here, right now, that's going to come back and bite us in the arse.
What way was the finances most broken?
I think just like old school. So let's embrace technology, okay? Let's just not have loads and loads of paper lying around the place and things like that. Let's make it really, really easy. Let's make it easy for people to take responsibility. Let's make it really easy for them to understand finance. And most and foremost, let's empower people in the business to understand finance, to engage with it, to want to have control, and to want to play a whole part in the football club and the journey we're going on.
Where were you spending money that you were like, oh, God, why are we spending money here?
I don't necessarily think there was a culture like that, but it's all the things, it's all your subscriptions, it's all the things just tucked away. I'd say the cloth was quite lean, but it was like, if we're going to spend money, let's spend it a lot wisely.
You then have that challenge where you're doing a lot of this work and you're allocating budget away from the field, but at the same time, you've got to keep pouring money onto the pitch to ensure the performance of the team is as good as it can be. What are the challenges of doing that and being the face of those decisions?
So we also spent a lot of investment into not on the team. So the first thing we did was to invest in the matchday experience. So we knew that we couldn't necessarily, at the minute, rely on the product on the pitch. We're in a really, really competitive league. We got one of the smallest budgets. So how do we engage as many people as possible on a match day and then grow our revenues? So for us, food and drink. Let's try and be really good at serving as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, and to the best level that we can and the best quality. Let's go and put live music in. Let's go and engage with our community, and let's start to develop a younger generation of supporters.
How much does like food make on an average game day?
Reasonable amount for us. So we're up 68% in 2 seasons. And we've just looked at the basics. So we've taken cash out of our stadium. We've done that, not to piss people off, but we've done it to speed up transactions. We've reduced our menus down. We've made it as quick and easy as possible, we hope, to get food. Now, the problem we've got at the Abbey is it's a really old stadium. It's aging, we've got challenges, but let's do the best with what we can do at this moment in time, and let's give people a great afternoon out. Let's give them memories.
But you have no terraces, right? So that kind of forces you to have a look at how you can utilise the space around the stadium.
So we have terraces, we don't have any concourses.
Sorry, concourses.
So we've had to go and put a couple of spaces in. We've had to go and put more toilets in. We've literally done the best we can do where we are right now. But what we wanted to do was create a fear of missing out. So we did things like put a sticker album in, put the stickers in the program, put a fan passport in. Let's make it so that people don't want to miss out on a match day. They don't want to miss out because they're either collecting something or they're engaging if they're a younger fan, or if they're an older fan, they want to enjoy that beer and that experience irrespective of what happens on the pitch.
How difficult is it to get fans to spend that hospitality pound with you compared to just coming to the stadium for a game?
It can be difficult, particularly when you're in a city where there are so many different options available on a match day. So it's about making memories. So we say, right, what are our objectives? One of our objectives is to make memories on and off the pitch. And we've seen an increase in our attendances of 60% post-COVID, and we've run at a home occupancy of 90%.
Are margins good on food and drink?
Food, yes. Drink, less so. So.
That's interesting because I thought it would be the opposite, given booze being...
Yeah, you got to look at labour as well. There's a fine line and a fine balance between the amount of labour you put in and your speed of service and then the return that you get.
What's been the most transformational thing that you've integrated into the club off the field since you joined?
I think the training ground. So when I joined, the training ground was one of the university sites, lovely location. You go down this road and there are like £2-3 million Cambridge houses either side. And look at this, that you're a player coming to join Cambridge United. You've heard things about the city, its culture, its architecture, education, tech, the place to be outside of London. You go down this lovely road, you pull into this university playing fields, 4 okay pitches, a cricket pavilion, which has probably not seen any work since the 19th century. And then there are just 6 porter cabins, different shapes, different sizes. Some have got power, some have got heating, some have got water, but not all 3 services in all of them. The players were changing in different rooms, so the team were never together. The manager would have to go and get the toilet rolls, and the food would have to be made at the stadium and driven across the city, which could take half an hour, and then it would be cold. We were never going to create necessarily a long-term sustainable League One side with this in place. We had to go and create a new environment, which we did. So we put a £3.5 million training ground in place. To do that in Cambridge can be difficult, particularly with planning. So it's almost a net zero build. It was a modular, and we built the thing in 6 months. You'd never know it's modular. It's got analysis room, offices, changing rooms, gym, and it's fit for this level. But from a recruitment perspective, it's been fantastic. And from a retention perspective, it's been fantastic. And that's not just the players, that's the staff as well. Because before, how do you socialise? How do you have conversations? You couldn't do that. Whereas now we're finding the players and staff are staying longer, they're engaging. We've managed to bring our under-18s into the same building. Now, it's no coincidence that there are 5 or 6, let's call them under-18 first-year, second-year pros that are now around our first team. Because the manager can say, right, I'm 2 or 3 players short today, lads, come over. The first team are interacting with them. They're learning. There's a continual learning and evolution process taking place, which we didn't have.
Okay, that's a massive decision to make, right? £3.5 million allocated towards a training facility. What's it like when you're making a decision like that in a football club and as a board, when you've got someone has to basically sign off and say, right, we're doing this? Is there friction? Does everyone have to be in agreement? What's the process?
So it's part of the strategy. So the owners have got a vision on the board. So their vision is to invest in the infrastructure, and then there is a long-term benefit to that.
So it's the owners stumping up the cash, just because you can't take £3.5 million out of a budget in 1 year. So how does the financing work?
So that's ownership investment.
Ownership investment.
Yeah, but that will have a benefit on the club in the long term and its value. But the difficulty, I think, is how do you communicate that to the fan base? Because if you look at the club it's been in the Football League, this is its 4th season in League One. First season came up, you've always got that bounce. Good season, finished top of the bottom half, played Newcastle in the FA Cup at St James's Park and beat them. I mean, that's their best season since the 90s. Next season goes to the final day and they stay up, needing results to go the other way in 2 other games. They were pretty much dead and buried. And then last year stayed up on the final day as well. Now, that's no surprise because their budget is in and around the bottom 8. Probably closer to the bottom 4, so if they have to overachieve to stay in the league. So there's a real balance between investing in the infrastructure, trying to stay in the league, and at the same time trying to educate the fan base what we're trying to do, that there will be a long-term benefit, and that we're not just going to go and chuck that £3.5 million onto the playing budget and then try and flirt with the playoffs or try and get promoted.
One thing that Liam, I think, very much focused on in the show we did with him and in the discussion was actually revenue generation through player sale and the development side. How do you think about that as a real revenue driver for you, and what % of revenue is sales today?
So that's an area that we're not very good at. It's an area that we're trying to develop. We had a very, very good FA Youth Cup run a few years back. We got to quarterfinals and played Arsenal at the Emirates. Those players now are transitioning into our first team and will be future assets. We've got a really good academy, but we've had a block where we just haven't been able to get them out of the academy and get them into the first team.
Why?
Probably two reasons. So one is that need to survive. You're battling to stay in a division. Are you going to put your trust and confidence in a young player? Have they got the experience? How are they going to cope under that pressure? Sometimes it can work the other way and they've just got no pressure. They come on and they do things that you don't expect and the opposition don't expect. But the other piece is the manager. You know, who's the manager? What's going on? They've all got different motives, all got different objectives. And if the manager's objective for that season is to stay in the league, then you can't bemoan that he's not given those young players the opportunity. We're in a situation now where we're trying to embrace that. And again, you talk about juggling acts and finding balances. We're finding a balance between investing in infrastructure, trying to stay in the league, and at the same time bringing young talent in to develop asset value.
If that's an area that you want to develop, when you're hiring a manager, you've got Gary Monken now, former Premier League manager. Is that an area you want to then make sure that manager backs, that they actually do maybe promote youth when you know it's a really important part of the business line? Yeah,
and if you look at the journey the club's been on end of last season, so Gary comes in, his objective was to stay in the league. There was a style of football that was required and the job was done. In the summer, we've tried to be a bit more expansive. We've tried to develop as an outfield unit, and we're sitting here today 12 games in. We've got 10 points. Now, we probably need to get to 50 to stay in the league. Now, if you go back 3 games ago, we're 9 games in, we've got 1 point. We've lost 8. So again, it's having that trust and confidence in the process, in the people. If you look at the decision the owners and the board made, then they're 9, 10 games in, we've not won a game. They're backing that decision. There is a long-term outcome. Now, hopefully...
Is that a bit awkward? I mean, it's like there's no more objective data to say, well, you are not doing a great job, bluntly.
Bluntly, yes. And I think if you're maybe a fan or somebody else from the outside looking in, you're going, what's going on? Like, you won 1 game, you've got 1 point from 9 games.
Do you feel the pressure to take action? We had Steve Pagliuca, who owns the Boston Celtics, and he said one of the hardest things as being an owner is actually silencing out the crowd and then independently making decisions.
So I'd say one of the things that's really great about Cambridge is everybody's aligned. Everybody knows the business plan. Everybody knows what's happening. Great owners, great board. The business is split in 2. I look after the business side. Ben Strang, Sporting Director, looks after that side. So what you get is quite a balance, you get objectivity, and you get an environment where you can make sensible decisions. And I think you also need to look at the moment, what's going on, what's happened, what's the data really telling you, maybe beyond the number of goals. Are you in games? Are you not in games? You know, have you had a bit of hard luck? Has something come off someone's backside and gone in the last minute, which has maybe happened in a few games for us? What's the feel? What's the feel of the dressing room? What are the senior pros saying? What's the manager saying? Has the manager given up belief? Who else is out in the market? Maybe actually the best person for the job is already in the house. Why go and change?
Is it really hard having to fire a manager?
Not my job, actually. So the owner does that, which I think is good. Because...
Wow, why?
Because the owner...
Is that normal?
It depends on the setup. When you lose a manager, it's a really difficult thing in most cases, unless you think... Because if you've got it right in the first place, if you've gone and got the right person for the club and the right person for the culture, you're going to forge relationships with them. So Mark Bonner left Cambridge after 4.5 years. The next day, it was like someone had died because people have built up such a relationship. The guy's done an incredible job. It can vary, but it's a really tough process. Mark Bonner...
Well, it's nice for you. You can call him up afterwards and be like, I disagreed with that decision. I'm here for you. I'm here for you. It was his decision.
Hey, look, football's football. Mark Bonner goes... on the Tuesday night when we played Lincoln in November. On the Wednesday, I went on my honeymoon. Now, maybe I was mad or crazy for going on my honeymoon during the season, but football never stops. I spent 10 days on honeymoon during a process where we were getting a new manager in. So you ask it, is it difficult? It's because what also happens then is that in most scenarios, managers go, but also their backroom staff goes. Now you've got a real threat that the culture of your club could change. The manager comes in, wants to change everything. Now, the difference at Cambridge has been, we've only been looking for a manager. We think we've got some great people in our backroom staff. So why would we get rid of them? They fit our culture. They've got good values. They work hard. So when you're looking for a manager, that's also part of the rationale that you're looking for.
Do you find it's very difficult when you're doing that with with the management, and then you're also recruiting players? How do you approach recruitment at Cambridge?
We split it at Cambridge. We split it business and we split it sporting.
Is that good?
I think it depends on a few things really. Skill set. So my skill set, I would say, is in the business side. So if my skill set's in the business side, why on earth would the owners say, go on, start signing players? It could be like Football Manager or Fancy Football. Whereas actually...
And then you'd be more successful than half of them.
Well, who knows? Go and put the trust in the people that have studied it and have got the experience to go and make those decisions.
So what do? Set a budget and then let them go?
Yeah, there is a budget. It's agreed between owners, boards, myself, and that's it. We trust you. Off you go. There's the parameters. Go and do it.
How often do you pay a transfer fee versus how often do you get free transfers?
I would say 95% free transfers.
Wow. When do you break the rules and pay when's the 5%?
It depends on the deal. So does a player want to get out of the club? How much are we paying the player? If we're paying the player maybe less than we thought we were going to pay them, maybe we could afford a transfer fee. But on the whole, it's always going to be free agents or loan market.
Total wage budget? Percentage of revenue?
Probably a third.
Okay.
25% to 30%.
I thought it'd be more than that. Yeah.
25 to 30%.
I'd say that's quite good, no?
We're going to be at the bottom end of the spectrum. We are a club that isn't going to live beyond our means. This year, our budgeted loss is £3 million. So our owners are happy to put that and invest that into the club, but we can't lose any more. So running a business that's loss-making you have to get your head around that, but we can't lose that. Last year, we didn't lose as much as we thought because we performed better in other areas on the pitch. But if you look at our last few years, we've increased our revenues by 20%, which is great, but our costs have gone up by 35%.
What's the biggest addition on that cost base been over the last few years?
Probably player wages, but you've also got to look at the state of the economy. You've got to look at inflation, national minimum wage. We got the budget coming out today. You've got to look at operating costs as well. So post-pandemic things have gone up. But on a match day, we have got 150 to 200 members of staff to deliver that game.
So 3 million operating loss, run a very tight ship financially, operationally very lean. Are football clubs good investments?
Depends what the motive is. I think depends what the motive is. They could be a great investment from a holistic perspective or an emotive perspective. What's the journey that the investor wants to go on? Because
from a financial perspective.
From a financial perspective, they can be. We think they can be, and that's why we're investing off the field. That's why we're rebranding. That's why we're trying to align ourselves close to the city, and we're trying to build a club that is, attractive to all kinds of different demographics, whether that's the demographic that comes and watches us in the week, the demographic that comes and uses our stadium facilities, or sponsors.
Would you like to just have a ton of cash poured on you? If you have private equity come in now and say, hey, you know what, we think Cambridge as a city is great. You're the only club in this catchment area. Let's throw 100 million into Cambridge. Fucking blow out facilities, development, spend, go. Would you like that, or do you get joy from actually running the business as a business?
Are those potential new owners and investors, do they fit the culture? Because if they don't fit the culture, if they don't align with the values, then it's a straight no, because it will just end in tears. There is a personal kind of, what are your motives? Why do you get up every day? Because working in football, it's not really a job. It's a way of life. Okay, it's 24/7. You're on your honeymoon and you're still dealing with the game and the business. But what's going to get you out of bed? Because you have to get out of bed. You have to be in. I've worked at 3 clubs, and you have to chuck yourself in. You cannot be half in, half out. You must fully submerged. You need to understand the city, understand the culture, the fans, the owners, everything, the history, the heritage. If you don't do that, you're going to fail. But for me, I think there is what's the driver at Cambridge? The driver at Cambridge is this phenomenal opportunity to go and align a club with an internationally recognised city and to try and do it in the right way with the right values in a sustainable manner. Now, if I look back at my previous sort of what got me up in bed, or what did I have to do at the previous jobs, was at Newport. Why was I doing it? I was in a crazy scenario where I'm 29 years old and I'm running a football club in the Football League. My objective was always to go and run Stevenage Football Club. I was a fan. I used to stand on the terraces with my dad since I was 8 years old. That's where I wanted to get to in my career. At 31, I didn't think that was going to suddenly land on my lap, and it did. It's like, wow. Now I'm 31. I'm running the club that I've supported since I was 8 years old. Right? What's my real objective? Okay, my real objective is, do not mess this up, because your friends and your family are standing on those terraces right now, and one day you need to potentially go and stand back on there with your dad and enjoy a game of football.
Is that I want to say dangerous position to be in? Because does it make you too safe when you're led in that kind of way? Does it stop you maybe pushing things out in ways you could do to try new things, because you're almost scared of corrupting the success and the current state of a club? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
It's a balance, isn't it? The balance is kind of like change and evolution. If you stand still in any business, you will go backwards. So I think that's something that's always stuck with me. You have to drive a business forward. You cannot sit still. That's one of the reasons we've just done doing the crest and the rebrand project, because we're not necessarily relevant to the digital world and the younger generation of supporters. So I think you have to be brave. You have to have thick skin. You have to know that, okay, you might be doing things as part of a plan and you've only communicated steps 1, 2, and 3, but you know the rest of it. You know 4 to 10. And sometimes it can be difficult to take a group of people, whether that's internal, external, on that journey. But as long as there's a clear plan with the ownership and the directors, then, okay, you know where you're going.
What % of revenue is sponsorship?
We are probably in the realm of 15 to 20% now.
Is that kind of standard?
We're probably slightly ahead of the curve. I would say we're top 10 in League One, which might surprise a few people given the size of the club. Average crowds of just under 7,000, but we're trying to do things ever so slightly differently, and we're trying to utilise the name of Cambridge. You've also got to look at who's around us. The shirt sponsorships are really interesting, but particularly the modern ones. So, we're going for a process now. You don't like to change very often. We had...
Who's your current ones now?
Brewboard, so local brewery in Cambridge. Why we partnered with them was because we wanted to link ourselves to the city, but also to embrace the matchday experience. Perfect partner. Previous to that, Mick George, long-term standing sponsor, local company, really big employer. Where do we want to go? We want to go forward. We want to have an increase in what we receive. We want it to align to new branding, and we want it to align to the city. Now, when I was at Stevenage, it was a really interesting scenario where an agency contacted us. We'd just rebranded. We were bottom of the Football League, and they had said, we've got this brand. They want to work with you. Okay? All very hush-hush. Came into the commercial manager guy there, been there 25 years, great guy, Clive. And for a little while, we didn't know who the brand was. They want to work with you. They want to work with you. Okay, fine. This is a bit weird. Anyway, we then got to the point where the brand got revealed, and that brand was Burger King.
Why?
Well, we're bottom of League 2, and why on earth did Burger King want to sponsor us? Why? We were sort of like scratching our heads a bit. And we met with David Agency, a guy there called Pancho, and he said, look, I want to work with you. You're doing things a bit differently. We've just done lots of digital work, digital matchday program, things like that. He said, we want to do something very different with you. We want to use your digital space in EA Sports FIFA video game. And so what they did, they took out a sponsorship with us. So they didn't pay over the odds. And they said, look, what we want to do is we want to give away free food when people play as Stevenage in the game. So we're like, okay, great. Well, we've got nothing to lose. We've got an interesting brand. This might give us a bit of a boost.
Amazing. People will play more at Stevenage. Yeah. They'll get to know the players better, familiarity.
Precisely. But what they'd done, which is really astute, there is that space, which nobody realised. Everyone's looking at this. That's how you sponsor in football. That's how you put your brand on a shirt. But you're only getting seen in the stadium and on your TV audience. Go back to 2018, your TV audience was tiny. Maybe not so much now with the Sky deal, which we've spoken about. But they said, look, FIFA is the biggest played sports game in the world. So and you're not charging more for that. You've just told us how much you want for the front of the shirt. Well, we've realised actually we're going to get that as well. So thank you very much. And it was a really successful, really smart,
super smart.
But we had to embrace it. We had to be different. And when that went out, we got obliterated. Why are we promoting a fast food? Our fans hated it. We had some kits that looked like they had ketchup and mustard all over them. But we couldn't tell them what was coming. That was really difficult.
So you had to suck it up.
We had to suck it up. And there are moments in any business, and in particular in football, where you have to suck these things up and you have to take it knowing something's coming. And when it comes, it's going to be great. And it went out, and it actually flopped that weekend. It flopped on the Friday. Nobody played it because everybody used to still go out drinking then. So all the people playing FIFA never bothered. People didn't do it Saturday. But Sunday evening, people went, oh, actually, I've seen this. I'm going to get my Xbox, PlayStation out. I'm going to play it. And it picked up a bit of traction, and it was really good. And then like 6 months later, I think it was in the pandemic, somebody picked this up, a girl, and she put this post out. People obviously spending a lot more time on like LinkedIn and things like this, and this thing just went viral. All of a sudden, we got these newspapers called up, and it was almost like a second wind. And we became the most played team in the world on that video game that season, which is just mind-blowing. And it was during COVID, and I know it was during COVID, was because everybody got furloughed at Stevenage, me and the finance manager. So I had to go and deal with the club shop orders. We were selling shirts to 108 different countries around the world.
Wow.
All over the place.
So did your revenue just go bananas?
It went bananas during that period, yeah. And then, to be fair to Burger King, the following season, they then sponsored the women's team for the same sponsorship rights as the men's. They changed their logo to Burger Queen. They changed the local restaurant and rebranded Burger Queen. But what we had off the back of it was this new sort of gaming audience, new gaming community that were engaging with the football club. The following season, Amazon Prime went on the front of the shirt and promoted their gaming division.
Why did they do it with Stevenage?
A couple of things. Look, there's a local restaurant literally next to the stadium, so that was attracted to them. I think they were probably looking for a club that couldn't afford to say no. Yeah. Maybe some of the bigger clubs could have said no. Maybe they didn't want to go for that. Remember, Burger King are quite an edgy brand. They're not quite as clean cut as some of the other fast food.
Did you see a boost in other areas of your business because there were more game players playing in Stevenage?
Yeah, predominantly like digital revenues.
Yeah,
we did. But we go back to where we are now with Cambridge. It's like, okay, we have to get the right brand, the right partner. So at Cambridge, one of the things that we're really big on is we won't partner with gambling companies. We won't partner with crypto, and we won't partner with vaping, because we think that is detrimental to the culture we've built, the values that we've got, and actually there is more value in us sticking to those. We could have done the front of shirt already to 4 or 5 gambling companies, and I'd be sitting here today and my commercial manager feeling a lot less stressed than we probably do now. But
good for you.
Stick by your principles.
Yeah.
And we were really lucky. A couple of months ago, Fair Game Index came out, which is an index that looks at fan engagement, governance, financial controls, and how clubs operate. And we came top of League One, which was incredible. But then we also found out we came top of the Football League, and we came third out of the 92. So there's a value to us trying to do things in the right way.
When you're packaging those commercial deals, does it matter who your fans are as much as how many of them there are? Naturally,
if you're the other side of the table and you're the brand, you want to put your brand in as many places as possible. But I would argue, so let's just say we've got an average crowd of just under 7,000. We're maybe selling 10,000 shirts in a season. This year, we went, actually, I always think of football, have a niche. So if you look at Forest Green, their niche is eco. When was it Stevenage, it was, what's the niche? Okay, doing things a bit differently, gaming. Cambridge, we're trying to align close to the city, which is what we've done with some of these. But we've realised there's a niche in football fashion. Look at Venezia and what they've done. There's a niche in this country. People like food, so let's get really good food and drink. And people like fashion. And people that aren't necessarily fans of Cambridge United still like great football shirts. So we've tried to be a bit different. We've tried to align to the city. We've got the home one is very retro. It's very Cambridge. It's very safe. The away, which is the blue one, is supposed to be representative of the Cam River. We've had lots of things when it came out. Again, we talk about when we put things out, riding it. We got hammered again. Oh, it looks like a Wetherspoons plate. It's sold 3-4 times over. And then the third one here, which is linked to Reality Checkpoint in Cambridge, again linking it back to the city. That is our best-selling shirt of all time, and that's on its 6th run.
How much does it cost to buy a shirt?
The retail at Cambridge,
Yeah.
48.
48 quid.
Yeah.
And the margins on them are
50-ish% maybe.
50-ish%.
Yeah, it depends.
So it's a decent revenue driver.
Yeah. Now there are clubs, particularly in the Premier League, who were selling for well over 48. Well, I mean, we're talking. I think I've seen some go for sort of 100, 120.
Yeah.
Which is madness.
But you're doing $250,000 in net profit a year from shirts, basically. Yeah. It's pretty good.
I mean, we're in the most crazy position this season where we've hit our retail budget for the season, and we're in October.
What's the relationship like with Umbro as a result of huge success when it goes well?
Really good. So we've just re-signed with them, but we've re-signed on the proviso that we have full control over what we want to do.
Do others go in for the tender? Like, do you speak to them?
Yeah, we run a tender process, but again, it's about finding the right people to come on your journey and the right partners. So we've got just under 2,500 players in our academy pathway at Cambridge. They're all buying kit packs. When I first came to the club, those 2,500 packs got ordered in individual items, put in a container, and the staff used to have to go and pack them up and send them out. Umbro did that all for us. Let's let our coaches, they're not retail people, let's let them coach. Let's let the experts, Umbro, let them do the legwork for us.
And what do deals look like with them?
You will get a level of gift of kit, which it's a credit essentially, which is part of the deal. You'll get some marketing money, and you'll get, maybe a small piece of sponsorship as well. Essentially, it's based on how much you're going to order through retail, how much you're going to order through maybe your academy, first team, etc. as a club. And that spend works on a bit of a scale, and then you receive back a gifted kit and a sponsorship.
And do you take 20, 30% of sales as a club?
So the different models, we buy everything, then we retail everything. We want full control. We want to control that whole experience. If a fan's got an issue with anything, we want them to come and see us. We want to engage them. We want to give them good service.
What about design? Is it collaborative? So they come in and pitch to you ideas, and then you guys go back and forth. How does that work?
They used to pitch to us, but now we pitch to them, which is a really interesting sort of how it's all changed. We've got a guy, Gareth Daniels, who is a self-obsessed kit geek. He's a Cambridge fan, and he runs our retail department. And he will go into every single detail. From this one here has got the coordinates of the reality checkpoint, so all the small details. He'll know what's going on, and he comes up with lots of ideas. And then as a club, we sit down in a room. Does it align with our strategy? What's the messaging? How are they going to feel? How's the home one? How's the away one? If the away one is a bit crazy, then maybe we need to balance it back. But also we're looking at what's our warm-up wear? What's our training wear? Not everybody's going to buy a shirt, but they're going to want to potentially represent themselves. So one of the things we've just done with the rebrand is to bring in secondary identities, so that people that maybe want to be linked to the history and the heritage can do that, and they don't have to wear a shirt.
You see some clubs do different badges on their 3 kits. Will you do that? Will you change the badge?
So we spoke about the debranding piece. So if you look at the new badge, there's the ability there to debrand it if we want to. Right here, right now, we're not going to do that because we need to educate people. We need to get used to the current identity. But yeah, everything's up for grabs. You need to think outside the box. You need to be different.
We talked about all of this, and it's amazing that kind of maximization of what you've got as a club and trying to make as much as you can from that existing inventory. The regulations in the broader football league are changing. Why is it so important that you do this now as a club?
I think the way regulations will go is that the value of equity coming in from owners to be able to go into the playing budget, I think, will reduce, and therefore there will be a bigger reliance on commercial revenue or football fortune. So the player trading model, cup runs, or just purely running the business in the best manner and driving revenues.
So to be clear, the clubs that make the most money will be able to spend the most. I think
that's where it will go, and that's right. That's how you have real competition, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch as well.
Do you think the structures in the Premier League that we see right now as being majorly problematic when reported on profit and loss are sufficient at a top level, and that you should operate differently at a lower level?
I think it's difficult to say. We go back to that whole bit. They're all different. They're different leagues, different levels, different numbers. But I just think the principles have to be the same.
If the principles there are like, burn as much money as you want, I've got billions, bluntly, and I can use shell companies in different areas, all these, great. And then for you, it's like, actually, please don't lose too much money. It's completely different.
So we've been working with some of our directors have been working on the fan-led review. So that's just going. The bill's just going to go through now. It's really, really important. The Premier League is the best league in the world, but we have to remember that the English football pyramid is the best pyramid in the world. And as a collective, we've all got a responsibility to look after that pyramid, to make sure it survives and to make sure it thrives.
If you were to separate between, I think you said 80%, 12 and 2, if you were to reshape that, what should those numbers be?
I think there needs to be an increase at League 1, League 2 level, definitely. But I think there's a big piece of work to be done on that.
But 50, 30, 20?
Could do. You need to think carefully about it, because you don't want to cause imbalances, and you don't want to create a culture where, if you've not got the processes and the systems in place, you don't want to create a culture where suddenly all that money flushes down and then it's misspent.
Exactly.
You got a magic wand and you're looking at that pyramid in the English football kind of ecosystem, and you can change one thing. What would you change?
I would say we need to create a far fairer and equal playing level throughout the game. We need to ensure that the bottom clubs can still compete with the top clubs in the division. And I think that's getting stretched and stretched and stretched.
How do we do that?
I'm not sure that right here, right now, there's an exact answer to it. If you look at the Premier League, you've got kind of like the top 6. If you look at the Championship, you've got those yo-yoing sides. I mean, the fact that the 3 teams promoted last year from the year before from the Championship to Premier League go up, come down, that can't be right.
But this is my problem with the financial model that I see developing now, really, with that spend. Because I think maybe Leicester, but I think the other 2 will go down this year. And if you have 6 teams that have gone up in the last 2 years and 5 go down, and a lot of that actually comes down to maybe responsible business, because they haven't spent stupidly, because they realise that actually they can't afford to and go down again. You don't have the competitive balance in the Premier League, which makes it the best league in the world.
Precisely. If your bottom 3 are going to lose nearly every week, which is what's happening right here, right now, then that's no fun to watch. And I think the thing you just touched on there is you need to also make sure that clubs don't come out the Prem and just drop straight through. That can't happen. That's that the game has a responsibility to try and ensure that doesn't happen. Now, appreciate in some cases that might be driven by mismanagement of ownership in some of those clubs.
Why does that happen?
Some of it's to do with mismanagement. Some of it is to do with
player
exodus, or offering players ridiculous contracts over long periods of time that don't have relegation clauses in it and puts the club in jeopardy. It goes back to having fundamentally good business principles.
Are Chelsea's long-term player contracts a new form of innovation and financial engineering that is very smart and savvy, or is that actually financially imprudent and a mistake?
Somewhere in the middle, I'd say.
I wish they'd come out and talk about it, so you could understand why it's a valuable strategy, because it's a really interesting one, and they've run rings around the regulations in football in lots of ways. But I think fans would love to know more and actually properly understand it. I mean, amortization now is a more popular word in football than it's ever been, but people don't.
All these words are coming to football. One of the ones we've used today, which I hate using, brand. Brand. All these words are coming, but you're seeing that's, in some respects, that's a good thing.
Yeah. The main thing I was going to ask, which is kind of your point on how do you create top to bottom, do you not just think the issue lies with governing 72 clubs in a single system where you've got they run in completely different ways with completely different issues and challenges and opportunities? Yeah,
and you have to remember that the Football League is 72 members. If you're going to get anything voted for or passed in terms of regulation change, then it all comes down to the voting of the clubs. And there are some instances where certain clubs are not going to vote for certain things because of their ownership model, because of their own targets, objectives, financial positions. It's just not going to happen. So that's the piece that's got to be worked out.
It's the fundamental challenge. Literally.
There are scenarios where, it's almost like turkeys voting for Christmas. Look, I think it's great that it's being debated. It's great that there's shows like this. It's great that the government are now looking at it from a regulatory perspective. It can only be positive.
If you could take over one club in the Premiership, who would you take over?
I would go with Spurs.
Why? I
just think they're nearly there. They're nearly that top club, and all the infrastructure is in place. They've created a phenomenal training ground. They've created a world-class stadium. The work's done. Maybe you go in and you look at it with a different lens or a slightly different approach, and maybe you get success. But for me, that would be the one to go for.
What's the one thing that takes you to the next level now as Cambridge? You've achieved a lot off the field. What needs to happen?
Promotion.
So I'd argue not. which will be controversial. So I would say stadium. So we've got a stadium that's got 90% home occupancy at the minute and substandard facilities. So we're about to embark on a probably 20 to 30 million pound redevelopment of our stadium. We've decided to stay. We had the opportunity to relocate. We could have gone out city. There's no point in doing that. Why would we rip it out of the community, rip it out of people's match day traditions and things they've been doing with their dad and their kids for the last 30, 40, 50, 60 years? So we're staying put. We're redeveloping the Abbey. We need to turn it into a facility which we can use every day of the week. At the minute, we don't do any conference and banqueting. We've got rooms, but they're not big enough, so we just give them to the foundation and say, go and engage the community. Let them use the facilities. There's a bigger value in that for us. But we're going to increase the capacity to circa 11,500. Now we're doing that because Cambridge is growing exponentially. We're doing it because we know we're nearly at capacity. We've managed to grow at 60% and run at 90%, and yet we've barely won any football games.
11,500. That's 2,500 increase.
3.5.
3,500.
Yeah.
That's not that much, is it?
It's not, but you need to look at the footprint. You need to look at the fact there's other areas of the stadium that you could redevelop in the future. Again, live within your means. How are you going to finance that? How are you going to develop it? What's the business plan? We want to bring community facilities in. We're going to have to improve transport links. There's a lot that's got to be done, and it's a long process. But to do that, we've had to do a lot of hard work in the last few years. We've had to rebuild relationships. Don't forget, 2005, the club has gone bust. It sold its stadium. Some of those relationships are in tatters. We've had to buy back the stadium. We did that just over 2 years ago.
How much was that?
We bought it back for £4.5 million.
Got you. How much do you sell it for?
I don't know what it was sold for, but I suspect it wasn't £4.5 million. The people, luckily it fell into great hands, and the people that had it just helped the club out and realised its value to the community. So for us, yes, we need to improve on the pitch, and we're doing that. If you look at the style of play, probably at the minute to a couple of years ago, it's improving. Results have picked up in the last few games. We want to get over the line again this season, but we need to juggle getting over the line, staying in League One, growing our fan base, growing our revenues, and doing the stadium development. If we can continue to do that, once we get in that new stadium, we've seen the data. We've really analysed the data. We know, we've done ACON analysis of everybody living within an hour of Cambridge. We know who the people are on our doorstep. We think we're quite good at trying to put on a good match day. So let's do that in even better facilities. If we can get to 9,000, we'll be competitive, really competitive.
Should we do a quick fire round?
Just started it.
Game on. What's the hardest challenge of your job day to day?
I'd say the hardest thing is you have to be really, really agile. You have to make lots and lots of decisions every single day. You need to have trust in the decisions you're making whilst empowering staff to let them make their own decisions as well. You need to not lose sight of the vision, and sometimes you have to muffle out the noise around you and just keep ploughing on, even when right here, right now could be a difficult period.
Who are the biggest unsung heroes of football clubs?
Without doubt, volunteers and the backroom staff. Without doubt. So we have a lady called Wendy who's at Cambridge United. Wendy comes in every single day and helps wash the kit, sweep the stands every single day without fail. And this will sound quite embarrassing. Usually she's there before I get there. She's brilliant. There are so many of them. There were so many of them at Newport. Fan-owned. Those people are in every single football club, and I think you have to be really careful that you don't push them out. That those people are part of the fabric of the game. They're part of the fabric of the clubs. And if I was giving advice to somebody who was 29 years old now being CEO, respect what's gone before you. Respect the history and heritage of a club. Respect the people that have gone before you, because they were probably doing the best they could with the circumstances and the resources they had. And take them with you. Take them with you on the journey.
What have you done with Cambridge that you wish you hadn't done?
I think when you look at change management is difficult, and there's been a lot of change at the club in the last few years because we've had to change and we've had to accelerate. There's an argument to say at times we've changed and moved too quickly, and sometimes we haven't had the opportunity to communicate that internally and externally, and that probably was detrimental to some individuals or to some circumstances. So I think sometimes you can get carried away and you can want to move as fast as possible, but actually you need to move at a steady rate and a considered manner.
The Wrexham model, good or bad for the league?
Good for the league. Definitely helped with the TV deal. It's definitely helped, show the value of different assets. It probably reinforces that point. Have a niche, do things differently.
You can sign one player for Cambridge today. Who do you sign?
Paul Mullin. Top scorer in League 2 the season they get promoted. Goes to Wrexham. Top scorer in National League. Top scorer in League 2. Getting back at the Abbey.
Look, it's been fantastic having you with us today.
No,
we really, really appreciate you coming in and talking us
Thank you
through
so
it.
much, man. That's been awesome.
Thank you, guys. Cheers.